Hello and welcome to the Hispanic Patriot Podcast, everybody. A weekly podcast broadcast live from a secret, undisclosed location in the heart of the great state of Colorado. Here we speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help us God. My name is Nicholas Ross, and without further ado, we introduce our fearless patron, Hugo Chavez. Hey, take it away, Hugo. Welcome to the Hispanic Patriot Podcast, everybody.
All right. Here we go, guys. We have another bang-up show for you tonight. Welcome back to the Hispanic Patriot Podcast, where we speak the truth, bold, unfiltered, and unafraid.
Always.
Today, we're going back to one of the darkest chapters in modern American history, the 1992 LA riots. And we're connecting that chaos to today's assault on law enforcement, especially the men and women of ICE who are risking their lives to defend this country from the inside. So let's get into it. In 1992, April 29th, 1992, a mostly white jury acquits 4 LAPD officers in the brutal beating of Rodney King. The trial was controversial. The video was graphic. The verdict, explosive. Within hours, the streets of LA were engulfed in violence. 63 Americans lost their lives. Thousands were injured. Damages were well over $1 billion. It was the poor and working class, Black, Hispanic, and Asian, who paid the heaviest price. And we are doing it again. Sanctuary cities and ICE has been under attack. Fast forward to today, okay? We live in America where cities like LA now protect criminal illegal aliens at the expense of law-abiding citizens. Sanctuary policies turn law enforcement into the enemy. ICE agents, our frontline defenders, are being demonized. ICE doesn't make the laws. Congress does. They just enforce them. So the radicals treat them like villains. They care more about non-citizens than American families. Let me just say this as an immigrant. As a proud American of Peruvian descent, a U.S. Air Force veteran, and a father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and husband, my family didn't flee chaos to find it here. We came for freedom, opportunity, and justice. We Hispanics are not who the left thinks we are. We support police. We want safety. Attacking ICE hurts our communities the most. So what do? We support law enforcement. We stand with ICE. We fight for border security. Call out the radical left. Justice without order is not compassion, it's destruction. So that's the opening monologue here. That kind of lays the groundwork for what we're doing. Tonight we're going to have our good friend Adam DeRito join us here in a minute. A patriot, a warrior, and doing great things, some of which he'll share with us tonight. But we want to address this situation in LA and around the country now. Apparently there's
going to be riots all across the country, protests for what they call No King's Day. No King's Day. Very, very, very interesting title there. Very anti-monarchical in an age where the United States has been not ruled by a monarch for 250 years. But these people seem to think Donald Trump is one. Hello, Hugo.
I got knocked off.
That's quite
Look at
all right.
That. They're targeting me already.
As we've said, it's like you speak the truth, something happens. But you know what? God's always in control, and God is truth.
Absolutely. Well, let's.
I like it better on this side, anyways. Actually, maybe we'll make this a permanent thing. I'll be on the left, you'll be on the right over there. But no, guys, we have someone very special that we have been announcing for.
I'm always on the right.
This whole week. That's true.
All right, let's
ask Hugo himself. He's always right.
I see our our friend Adam DeRito is in the green room, so let's try to bring him on here. Adam DeRito was born in Poughkeepsie, New York, and grew up in West Milford, New Jersey. He started his public service career as a local volunteer firefighter, emergency medical technician, and search and rescue technician, specializing in high-angle rescue and vehicle extrication. He moved to Colorado in 2006 when he was accepted to the United States Air Force Academy. He has over 12 years of experience in the upstream, midstream, and downstream oil and gas sector. Earning his Master in Science in 2015, Adam has extensive experience in hydraulic fracturing, wellbore cementing, production facilities, completions operations, reservoir production methods, cased hole pump down perforating procedures, refinery operations, and industrial wastewater treatment. Now that's a mouthful. He's the founder of Leatherwood Development Group, LLC. Adam has advocated for reform in the Department of Defense for over 14 years in Washington, D.C. He provides consulting services for local, state, and federal legislative work as the originator of the DeRito Act, not Dorito as in chips, DeRito.
We've only made that joke once, people, so give us that.
He provides resources to federal military service academies and fellow service members when it comes to ending sexual assault and retaliation in the ranks. A member of the Common Sense Network composed of fellow veterans, he is the host of the Dark Sabre podcast and the Tuxes and Tomahawks podcast. That gives a voice to others who are dedicated to progressing reform in their local community, state, and nation. A veteran of the global war on terror, Adam continues to serve in the Army Reserve as an intelligence analyst for civil affairs and is a substitute teacher for St. Mary's Catholic School in Greeley, Colorado. A paratrooper, hobby farmer, and constitutionalist, he is dedicated in his position as president of the Colorado chapter for the America First Veterans Alliance. His vision is to bring out first responder and military veteran communities together by ensuring our collective conservative values are empowered in local, state, and federal elections to protect the freedoms of all Americans that our servicemen and women have dedicated and sacrificed their lives for. So without further ado, let us welcome Adam into the Hispanic Patriot Podcast. Adam, how are you?
Welcome to
guys,
the Hispanic Patriot Podcast, Adam.
It's great to be back on here, guys. It's a pleasure.
We love seeing you.
Awesome, man. You're looking great. You've been traveling around a lot.
Literally just got back from France like 48 hours ago. So that was a wild trip. So still suffering from jet lag, but...
Did you see Did you have some frog legs?
No, it did not. But definitely got the honor of jumping into D-Day, into Normandy. I was out there parachute rigging for the Grable Rescue Group, and then jumping with a lot of veterans, meeting World War II veterans and survivors from D-Day. Truly humbling, once in a lifetime experience, and really glad I got to meet those guys. So
that's on my bucket list. I would love to be.
Yeah, come with us next year. We'll throw you out of an airplane, Hugo. It's fine. It'll open. I'm rigging the parachute.
Love to do that and honor her grandfather, who was a paratrooper during the Cold War as well. So, Adam, it's very true. You met some amazing people, including one very famous one. Do you want to mention who that was for the show, for the audience?
Oh yeah, I met. Oh man, off the top of my head, Lieutenant Colonel.
You got it.
Yep. Yeah, just tell me the name because it's the rest.
West.
Yeah. Lieutenant Colonel West. Great guy, great American. He served in the Army for a long time. He's been very active in politics, and he was my jump master. So
can you believe that, folks?
Yeah,
That's
really,
awesome.
really great guy. Seeing Lieutenant Colonel West out there and jumping with us, pretty cool.
But I imagine the big honor was meeting those veterans of World War II, because whatever we can do in our modern day and age, it'll never compare to those adventures of those heroes who saved the world from global aggression.
Absolutely.
We only have a few years left. I mean, most of these guys are pushing 98 to 101 years old. There's not going to be many more memorials out in D-Day where there's going to be survivors out there. So getting to go out there while there's still some guys to shake hands who literally were re-walking the beaches that they stormed 81 years ago is insane. So
I have met a couple here locally. and they're awesome people, man. It's like I'm just so honored to be in their presence because of what they did and what they endured for us as a nation, and it just warms the heart to see them and see that there's still some that are kicking.
Yeah, I mean they were still up and walking around on the beaches.
They're usually pretty feisty folks.
We threw one out of an airplane with us. He's 98 years old, and we rigged him up to a tandem rig, and he jumped out at 8,000 feet with one of our guys, and he rode it all the way to the ground. We're like, the first time I did this, I was getting shot at. I think this time it was a little colder.
That was fantastic. That's a fantastic line right there. That's almost a Spartan-esque line right there.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump into what we're wanting to discuss tonight, which
from the most honorable type of people to
the most dishonorable, if you will,
in many cases.
But I wanted to touch base on something that I'm noticing, and that is that there's some folks doing some serious whining about the Trump administration. So I thought I'd post some thoughts to the audience that would be relevant to what we're going to discuss tonight. So number one, you need to accept the fact that this is the leadership that we working middle-class Americans wanted. We are pulling the economic weight in this country, and we are tired of pulling the weight of those that do not contribute. If you haven't already, get a job. Every business in the country is hiring, and you get paid for the work you do. And the harder you work and the more you learn, the faster you will advance and the more you will earn. It's an amazing concept. Understand that if you are a citizen or a legal alien, that you are not going to be deported. I don't care what CNN says. Tariffs are a bargaining chip. When you are in business, you make deals. And sometimes you have to play hardball. That's President Trump's calling card. It always has been. Read The Art of the Deal. That's how you get the deals you desire. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 protects you from discrimination by age, sex, race, etc. DEI openly violates this. Democrats want you to believe the opposite is true because they value your vote more than your quality of life. It's not the government's money, it's your money. You absolutely should give a damn about how it is spent. We are not the World Bank. If other countries need help, they should raise their own finances. I don't recall receiving any hurricane relief money from India or China. Drill, baby, drill. Want to know why? Because we have it. Are electric cars the future? Not in their current form. There is way more oil in the ground than lithium. And guess where most of that is? China. Want food prices to come down? Then energy costs have to come down. And that means oil, gas, coal, and nuclear. Unicorn farts won't power a factory. The economy and the security of the country are far more important than your feelings. So get over it. There are men and women, and there are women. It's simple as that. The two genders, that's basically it. Education is to establish a learning core that prepares a child for the real working world. Anything else is wrong. Donald J. Trump is the president of the United States, and he won in a mathematical landslide. So get over it. Now let's dive into this.
Hugo. What a summary.
Let's dive into this LA fiasco, okay? Because I want to address several topics on that issue, and the first one is, of course, the one that's being discussed the most everywhere, and that is, what authority does the president have to send in the military to a civil unrest? And I want Adam to address that because he's got an insight position on that. So
yeah, well, I'll just use my example of this. I was activated by President Joe Biden when I was in the National Guard, and we were activated and flown into D.C. within 48 hours of January 6th happening. We flew 50,000 National Guardsmen from every single state in every single territory into Washington, D.C. In order to respond to the so-called January 6th insurrection. They gave us live ammo walking off the airplane. And guess what happened? The same exact thing happened. They didn't stage for it properly. So we showed up with no food, no water, no place to sleep. Other than, hey, if you're in the Army, you know to train, sustain yourself. I was good for 5 days straight in my rucksack. So I had my whoopee, I had my Camelback, and I had like 5 MREs. I was good. I didn't rely on the government or anyone else to sustain me when I was out there. That's what you get trained for. So these pictures. So these pictures of Gavin Newsom showing, oh, this is how Donald Trump treats his National Guard. No, that's how you get treated when you're in the Army, because you're in the Army. That's just how it is. Get over it. That's what we signed up for. It's not supposed to be fun. It's supposed to suck. You know, you don't join to have a comfortable experience in the Army.
No, you join the Air Force for that, right, Hugo?
Yeah, the Air Force gets the hotels near the runway.
That just means
but
you're
no,
smart.
no. I mean, we were literally sleeping on the streets. We were sleeping in the halls of Congress. We were sleeping in Congress members' office, and then actually some representatives from the state of Colorado, which apparently last time I was on the show, I got in trouble for mentioning these things. So I'll keep it generic.
Mhm.
But there was representatives in the state of Colorado who were upset that we were sleeping in their parking spot and sleeping in their office when they called us out there. So then they forced us to go to the basement where the rats are, and I sat in a rat trap. It was not fun. But that's a true story, right? And we were eating leftover pizza that was donated by the pizzerias around the area because they did not prepare to give us food, or they didn't have a sustainment plan, no fuel plan, no nothing. They called us. We will respond. We can sustain for about 72 to 96 hours, but we're going to need more fuel, food, and water after that. And the U.S. government, the federal government, the Joe Biden administration failed the National Guard, and we had to literally pay out of pocket to sustain ourselves, right? But one of the interesting things that Gavin Newsom is doing right now that's not been public information, that I've been talking to a lot of members of the California National Guard, he is closing off access to all the state-run facilities. So, for example, the Pueblo Armory, that's down here in southern Colorado, right? If I'm a member of that National Guard unit and I'm activated, I can either go to Fort Carson, I can go to Pueblo, but that's a place for me to stage my stuff, set up a cot, get a shower, whatever else it is. Gavin Newsom has intentionally shut down all state-run National Guard facilities, and he is forcing the National Guard that is on federal activation orders from the President of the United States to literally pitch tents in open fields and soccer fields to have a place to stay, to try to prove a point that Donald Trump is disrespecting the National Guard.
Can he do that?
That is not accurate.
You believe he can.
So the governor can shut down state-funded facilities, which is every National Guard armory. Every National Guard armory is run by the state. But the President of the United States has supreme authority over all members of the armed forces, including the Army National Guard, the Army Reserve, and active duty. So when we get put on Title 10 orders, so there's two distinctions. There's Title 32, which is state and reserve orders, and Title 10, which is active duty. So as a reservist or a National Guardsman, if I get activated by the President of the United States, you get sent on a combat deployment overseas like I was, or you're put on active federal orders like from the President, you switch to Title 10. So that just means your funding switches. Your funding switches from state-run finances to the federal side. So now that the federal government is paying for the National Guard to do their mission, Gavin Newsom can sit there and say, well, I can shut down all the National Guard facilities and don't have to give any money. Right. So this is a problem. Right. And normally when this happens, if there's any riots or domestic unrest, it is even Jared Polis did it here. Like, the state allows them to use their National Guard facilities while they're on federal orders, because that just makes sense. The resources are already there. The motor pool is there. The MREs are there. It's easy for us to use. But so Gavin Newsom is intentionally causing a crisis with the California National Guard for them to force the federal government to come in and provide deployment, sustainment resources. Like, they're literally going to have to come in and build a tent city on an open federally owned land to sustain these troops, because Gavin Newsom won't let them use their own buildings that they're assigned to.
So
petty.
Let me ask you this: how do you assess the response to the unrest? Was it measured, excessive, or inadequate?
Inadequate. I mean, honestly, if we deployed 50,000 troops within 72 hours to Washington, D.C., we could do the same thing to California. It's not that hard. We have the ability. The best thing about the United States military is our logistics. We can move a Burger King overseas on a trailer into the middle of Syria in 24 hours. You could bet your ass we could deploy 10,000 troops to California in less than 2 days as well. I just think that, for all the young guys out there who watch this and the National Guard who are out there, sustain yourselves, bring extra MREs, bring extra water. Don't rely on the government to provide for you. You guys know that just as well as I do. You are trained soldiers. Do what you're trained to do. I think it should have been overwhelming sustainment, which I am glad he sent out the Marines from 29 Palms. I think that's equally hilarious because there was a helicopter flying over the football field, watching them doing their Marine Corps martial arts training, watching them flip each other and put each other in arm locks and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Because if you have Private Snuffy in the Marine Corps or even the National Guard who's just been sustaining himself on black coffee and Zyn and sweeping parking lots for the last 4 weeks, and he's getting the opportunity to shoot you in the face with tear gas and take him away from his daily job and his family, he's going to do it, right? So if you want to be a domestic terrorist, which this is what this is, let's be very clear. The uprisings that are occurring around the country right now with this No Kings rally, whatever else, if you are forcibly using violence in order to enact political change, that is the definition of terrorism.
Right. That's
that is
exactly
not peaceful
right.
protesting.
And this is why
if you're standing on a street corner with a sign and you're saying, I don't agree with Donald Trump or I don't agree with whatever, that's fine. You have your right to protest. But if you are lighting cars on fire, you are throwing rocks at police officers and damaging vehicles and hurting people intentionally, that is the definition of terrorism.
And we swore an oath. Of that. Yeah.
We swore an oath to the Constitution to protect it from against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So let's make that very clear. If I was a National Guardsman on the ground and I saw a cop get hit in the face with a brick, I'm going to shoot you in the head with a pepper ball. And I'm going to take you down and I'm going to zip tie you. I'm going to make sure you go to prison for a long time because that's what I'm. That's another be clear thing too, as a distinction with the Guard and the Reserve when they're on active duty orders in the United States. Now, if the President of the United States wants to use active duty federal troops, he has to use the Insurrection Act, which he can. He has not done that yet. But another thing, in order for me, when I was on the ground in D.C., to legally be able to shoot another American citizen or arrest them, we have to be deputized as sheriffs by that local law enforcement entity. So I was on the ground. I was given a badge number, right? I was a deputized member of that local police entity. So these guys are all deputized under the sheriff's office, likely. And then that's how they have that legal authority to shoot and arrest Americans and domestic terrorists and illegal immigrants.
Well, and I think that one principle that's really being ignored here is the fact of military principles. Like I can think of one historically, that the longer you force your enemy into a siege, the angrier they will be when they finally drag you kicking and screaming out of your holes. So it feels like that many times in these insurrections, there is only civil thinking, only civilian thinking, without any awareness to what the military response would or could be. The fact that we have National Guardsmen in California for these incidents should have been, I think, fairly obvious to the protesters and the organizers. So this is my question. Do you think that the response to this, being inadequate in your words, do you think that the plan of those who made this happen, and we all know what those entities are, do you think that the plan was to create violence and chaos, or is to make the Trump administration look bad? How deep and far-reaching were the plans for this insurrection, do you think?
It's both. It's both. So obviously this was a planned domestic terrorist action because you had pallets of bricks showing up on the streets again, just like they did during the BLM riots, right? These are planned, coordinated attacks. I even saw paperwork, for the No Kings rally that even the Waltons and Walmart are doing this. They're funding these things in the background. The George Soroses, if you want to go into that conspiracy theory. But in general, this is being funded by large companies that depend on illegal immigrants to sustain their businesses.
Slave
right?
labor,
so
we can call it what it
surprise
is.
Me. It doesn't surprise me that the Waltons are actually funding the No Kings rallies around the country and everything else. But another thing people understand is that it is the responsibility of the National Guard to secure domestic.
The alternative
peace.
would be a national riot police, which would be total tyrants.
Well, the National Riot Police is the National Guard. People don't understand that, like whether even the 101st Airborne Division during the Civil Rights Act, when it was passed, they had to provide security to escort the first African-American school children to a white school because they were causing unrest. So the governor of the state allowed the National Guard to come in their Jeeps and machine guns and escort these kids to school. That is the job of the National Guard. Now, if it exceeds the capabilities of the National Guard, right? If there's not enough people, not enough resources, then you can use the Insurrection Act. Then you can activate active duty troops or reservists on the federal side if needed to be. But normally the National Guard is more than capable in every state of handling these things. That's what we're trained to do. That's what we have done for over 250 years at this point.
As of very 2 days from now, 250 years.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So what should the role of the federal agencies be? like ICE or DHS during this the urban unrest? Should ICE have had a more active role in protecting federal facilities or personnel, or should it have been left to the local law enforcement?
So that's the thing. They're immediately responsible for their immediate buildings, but they only have so many resources to do that, right? So, like for example, the federal treasury right here, the Denver, where they print all the money, right? The Mint, the Denver Mint, like inside that fence, right? That is federal officer controlled area. So they can control and defend what they can. That's why those buildings are normally designed as blast proof buildings and everything else. They can defend within that 100-foot by 100-foot square. But 1 inch outside of that wall, that is the responsibility of the county primarily. That's the sheriff's office and everything else. So although ICE and the DHS, HHS, all these other federal agencies, they have the responsibility for that small piece of federal responsibility. Anything outside of that is the responsibility of the local government to provide protection. And what's disgusting is that the LAPD chief of police came out there and said, we are not going to work with federal agencies. So you're saying you're going to allow these domestic terrorists to cross over your county land to get to that federal building to perform a terrorist attack, right? And this is the problem we've seen in Colorado. Even John Fabicatoria has brought this up numerous times, is that local law enforcement is being hindered to working with federal agencies. And this is definitely something that needs to be remedied in the future, because it's the same concept as using the National Guard. So if the federal agencies can't handle it and the local police department can't handle it, then you need the National Guard to come in as well, which is going to be either a state activated entity or a federal entity, whether the governor of the state or the president of the United States activates those things. And this is actually reminiscent of what happened during 9/11, right? Is that all the federal agencies and local law enforcement people did not share intelligence. They did not work together. And as a result, more terrorist attacks happened, more people died than had to, even though we had all the information, we knew it was going to happen. But since none of these entities wanted to communicate with each other, it caused all these horrible things to happen. It's almost like we're not learning our lesson here, is that we need to allow local law enforcement to work with federal law enforcement seamlessly. But this whole Democrat versus Republican thing is actually causing law enforcement officers to get hurt in the process and more property to be damaged.
My concern, and it may or may not be legitimate to some, but my concern is that if law enforcement, meaning the non-military law enforcement, doesn't do their job, or not by choice, but by, for example, these stupid laws that prevent, local law enforcement from cooperating with federal authorities on something that is a federal issue, that it may spill over into vigilantism, where people
100%.
People are going to start
100%.
taking
rather have the National Guard doing
matters
this,
into their own hands. And I was just talking to Nick earlier before the show about Parker this weekend. This No Kings group was turned down for a permit because of the Parker Days Festival. And they offered them alternative dates. So it wasn't like they were telling them you can't do your protest as long as it's peaceful.
Right.
And their response has been, as of today, that they're coming anyway. And so I used to live in Parker. I have a lot of friends in Parker, Douglas County, Elbert County. Oops, we lost him.
That's great. We'll get him right back.
Looks at we're under attack tonight, man. What the heck's going on?
Well, we're talking about this, right? You notice that this is the same thing that happened with you before in the pre-show. It's like every time we talk about this No Kings rally, it seems like something goes on. But, one thing that I want to ask Adam when he comes back actually is, because it just struck me, the connection between Chinese fentanyl and the drug pushers that are obviously being brought into our country. Yeah. So that'll be spicy.
Sorry, lost that.
We're under attack, Adam.
Yeah, that happens.
For anyone in outside of Colorado, it's also storming around many of our places. So we apologize for any connection interference. But for all of our Colorado viewers, that's why we want to have a short message. Please be safe if you're going around Parker or at Parker Days. If this protest is here, I would recommend, and maybe you guys can back me up, don't interact with these protesters. They're professional people. They want to get your vote.
It's not worth it. If you've been planning on going to Parker Days, look, I used to live in Parker too. It's really a shame what's happened to Parker in the 10 years since I've left living there. It used to be a nice, quiet farm town. I used to go hang out at the tailgate, drink beers with my military buddies, hang out, watch the Broncos. and now it's just a bunch of liberal white women from California destroying that entire town. That's really sad. But another thing to consider is we've seen what happens when law enforcement fails and when the National Guard fails. We like to call them the rooftop Koreans. If anyone wants to go back to 1994 in LA, these guys did not want to lose their businesses, and he took out his oil Daewoo K1, got on a roof and started shooting gangbangers. And you want to know what happened to them? Nothing. And actually, I follow them on Twitter now, and it's so funny. It was like somewhere there's an old 60-year-old Korean who is dusting off his Daewoo K1, getting ready for the LA riots. And then the guy who actually was the guy in the picture replies, "No, my friend, it is always oiled and ready." So you got to understand, I mean, like these people are ready. And there are, I would say, even like during the whole Kyle Rittenhouse situation, what happened during the BLM riots, there are a group of Americans who will not stand by, and they will use their Second Amendment rights when the police and National Guard fail to defend their family and their businesses. So that's a warning to all these protesters out there who think that this is the riots of old. Americans are, especially in Florida, state of Florida is a no nonsense. Like the governor of the state is encouraging, hey, we have the Second Amendment right and we allow open carry down here. I don't suggest you go to try to destroy people's businesses. It's not going to work out with you.
Absolutely not.
And the other issue that's a lot of times discussed, and there's two schools of thought on this, and that is the civil military balance, between civil liberties with order during riots, and is there a line where martial law becomes a serious consideration? Now, personally, if I'm not mistaken, there is no provision in our Constitution for martial law per se. Is that correct? Or am I
correct? There isn't. The only thing the president can do in order to institute so-called martial law is to enact the Insurrection Act, which has been done before. It was done during World War II, with the Japanese internment camps, which is a dark part of our history for sure. But we do have enumerated executive powers that allow for that response. But that is also, this is the states' rights versus federal rights argument. This is why the National Guard exists. And the National Guard should be used at its maximum potential beforehand. Now, unlike in California, the governor of California failed to use the National Guard and purposely allowed these things to occur. So that then allows the president of the United States to maintain control of that state National Guard and to use the National Guard once again, but under executive presidential privilege to enact peaceful arrests and everything else to stop the riots. And I'm glad that President Trump did that nearly instantaneously. We didn't wait like another 2 weeks for this stuff to happen. He got them out there as fast as possible.
Very quick.
Yeah, that's very true. I think he's done a good job of reacting. Go ahead, Nick.
Well, I had a question because we were talking about corporate interest in supporting these riots. And for me, I always want to drill down to the root of things. Waste very, very little time. That's probably my mother's German coming out in me. But for the roots of this conflict being corporate, but also foreign interested, I have to imagine that many of these deportees are involved in the drug trade. We know that many people who have criminal records that we actually can catch are part of this. So I'm wondering if foreign entities, especially entities like China, who have an interest in pouring drugs into our country, have an interest in supporting this kind of unrest to make sure that their plans for their neo-opium war that is killing Americans daily isn't stopped in its tracks by taking down many of these key figures who bring drugs into the country, are often illegal immigrants. So, Adam, I wanted to ask from your military perspective, how vulnerable is America to foreign influence and foreign attacks during these kind of domestic protests?
Extremely vulnerable. This is actually, I had a very interesting podcast yesterday, which is actually posting on Monday with someone who works in the American pharmaceutical industry. We are only able to produce 13% of the rare earth mineral requirements for the ingredients for major drugs in the United States. Everything we rely on is actually coming from China, right? So this is actually an argument for part of the big pharma industry to maintain its profitability in the United States, because if we don't, we outsource critical life-saving medications to other countries such as China, and all they have to do is shut down that pipeline and your grandmother can't get her cancer treatment instantaneously overnight. There's nothing you can do about it, right? So I encourage everyone to listen to that Tuxes and Tomahawks episode on Monday. It's very interesting perspective I've never heard before, especially from somebody who actually works in the industry. But
I have the link for you in the description.
Yeah, and another, so going off with that is that if our supply chain for our critical life-saving medications is dependent on China now. And you have major businesses like Walmart or eBay or Amazon who are heavily dependent on Chinese supplies material. Of course, they're going to use shell company funding in order to encourage riots in the United States, paid for by the Waltons and other entities and other fake LLCs that were set up. We saw the story in the BLM riots. This is a constant playbook that's been repeating itself, but Americans have the attention span of a squirrel, so they don't understand to follow the money, right? When it comes down to it, we are threatening businesses, especially with the increased tariffs and everything else going around. But if we don't do that, we can't secure our own domestic supply and national supply security. So yes, this is definitely in the interest of other foreign nations to interject themselves in the rioting around the United States.
And that's why we here on Hispanic Patriot Podcast don't have sacred cows. We love our military. We respect our military, but we do not worship our military. We are free market people here, but we do not worship corporations. There's only one being worthy of worship. Correct. And it's not the people destroying our country.
So, as a segue to that, am I incorrect in thinking that if China were to, as you say, shut off the pipeline to our medications, could that be considered an act of war?
Yeah, thousands of Americans would die
when we shut off their oil.
Yeah, so it's actually this is something we definitely talked about. If we don't solidify an actual working relationship with this tariff thing or whatever else, or we don't secure a way of reindustrializing America that we can produce these things here domestically, such as computer chips or medications, if we ever got into a near peer conflict with Russia or China, which God forbid that doesn't happen because it's not going to work out well for us, because we literally can't supply our own critical medications to our own military troops right now. We actually depend on China to produce atrazine, which is the NBC reaction that you take if you get into a gas attack or something like that. We depend on China for those critical things, and every U.S. military member is issued that when they go overseas, right? So, yes, it is a massive threat that if China or Russia decide overnight that they want to shut off all trade and pipeline with the United States to that, it could be considered an act of war, because literally thousands of Americans would die within 30 days just from the lack of access to cancer medication, diabetes medication, anything like that. So, and they don't have to fire a shot to do it.
So, I've been hearing here in the last few days that that they've reached some sort of agreement with the Chinese with regards to the tariffs and rare earth minerals.
Yep. We'll have to see if they follow it.
What do you know about that?
It's a good option, and we definitely need to maintain those lines of communication right now until we can industrialize America to produce those things ourselves. But the big concern, which I saw, is that Trump did acquiesce to allowing continued Chinese student visas to our top universities such as Yale, Harvard, and everything else. Now, the problem with that is that these kids, most of them work for the Chinese intelligence agency, and they are constantly hacking into computers and stealing our innovation. America is the best at innovating, whether it's military equipment, medication, everything else. That's why
you get Nobel Prizes.
Even if people in the UK, when they can't get their healthcare done in England, they will spend the money to come to the United States and go see a doctor overnight, right? Yeah, we cost more money, but we have the best healthcare in the world, no matter what people say. That's why people come here. We invented all these drugs for the most part. That only switched in the mid 90s. Recently, most of the medication was actually made in Europe, and then that switched over to the United States. And now, since we're responsible for producing a lot of these medications and everything else, we are actually losing that from a strategic advantage. So the fact that we did acquiesce to allow student visas for China again is still concerning, because as of right now, with the way the liberal colleges are controlled, we do have to be concerned about espionage and them stealing our technology moving forward, especially as we move into sixth generation warfare. So,
yeah.
Absolutely. So these people have no right to be in our schools if they're spies.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And as an intelligence guy, I track these people all the time. It's very annoying. But there's a lot of domestic spies here in the United States that people aren't paying attention to. Some of them within the Republican Party in Colorado. Kidding. I just have to say that to piss off the people that I know are going to watch this.
If we want to get into that, there you go. But I put plenty of time for that.
Well, our entire party just imploded on itself within the last week, which I just like to hysterically laugh like the Joker and Batman and say, "I told you so."
You call it. I call it.
We literally said that this was going to happen, and then it happens, and everyone acts like they're all surprised.
I have a question about the actual perpetrators, or what they call agitators. And it's almost like they're wearing uniforms because they've been shown on camera. They're dressed in all black with black hats and a mask.
Yep, the black bloc tactics.
And gloves. And they're coming in and they're the ones that start doing the agitating. Now, I've seen videos from different cities, and I've actually recognized a couple that were actually in different cities. So that lends credence to the fact that this is an organized effort. It is not organic. Now, a lot of the, cretins that show up at these things they just go to basically, be a part of something and think they're doing something great. And then somebody had the noble idea to start flying Mexican flags. And I think that's going to backfire tremendously.
So these are all planned. Actually, we've actually on the open source side, now that we can talk about, we've actually intercepted multiple electronic pamphlets that are being emailed out mass to cities that explain this is how to dress, this is how to block tear gas, this is how to hand out pamphlets. These are the pamphlets you're going to hand out, and it's sent out to hundreds of local agitators, mostly Antifa, things like that in the local areas. And the reason for that is to disseminate responsibility, right? Because if all these people dress the same, they can't be cornered as easily, they can't be identified on cameras. If they're wearing face masks, it's harder to use facial recognition software. And then if you look at Denver the other day, there's a picture of a random old guy sitting on the side of the road with an entire F-350 full of Mexican flags for sale for $1. Well, where did they come from, and how did he get those so quickly? Pallets of bricks showing up on streets, right? These are all coordinated attacks, and this is being from the local, I just call them local terrorist groups. At this point, there's about 100 to 200 people per city. They're the ones being given all the information from their higher up authorities, such as the Waltons or whoever else is funding these things. They get the funding, and then they're the ones who agitate the crowds on purpose, because all you have to do is give it a little push, right? Just like the Joker says, you just got to give these people a little push, and then they'll take care of the rest and start causing chaos, right? So this is definitely all pre-planned, and it's just basic psychology.
Why don't they target these people that are dressed in black? They're like, big red flags. They know who they are. Why don't they go immediately after them?
Because it's the order of the sheriff and the local law enforcement authorities of what they've been told to do. Now, if this was an actual military counterintelligence operation, we'd have all these people taken out before they even walked within 100 yards of the state capitol, right? But we can't do that here in the United States because we have something called like laws and constitution, right? So overseas, you don't have any constitutional rights, so good luck.
Well, in other countries, they do far worse. They'll spray paint at protesters to mark them, unwashable paint, so you could be picked up later. There's Chinese facial recognition. Guys, I think we have to express here that our country, even in the suppression of these riots, like you said, is very soft-handed. This is velvet glove. There is way worse places in the world doing this kind of stuff.
Even in the UK, when I was out there, when there was a giant Muslim protest for environmentalism, they just turned all the TV cameras off, pulled all the power, and then ran through the crowd with horses and billy clubs and beat everybody down to the ground. You can't do that in the United States. Yeah, you can't do that here. Because we do have to respect your constitutional rights, and everyone is given due process. So until you actively, and they can see you shooting at a police officer, dropping a brick on their police car, and they can positively identify you, they can't just go around and start beating everybody down with billy clubs and hitting you with a fire hose like they do in Syria.
Well, and we have a very much empathy here that we understand in America, because we believe in the people, that these people are being directed not by their own will and against their own interests. So beating them up does nothing, absolutely nothing. They will find
You're just
new
encouraging them. You're just encouraging them. So
we know how to solve problems in America.
At what point, what would be the proverbial red line that had to be crossed before lethal force would be used?
I mean, honestly, one, you have to, the officer's life has to be in direct danger, right? So if they're threatening knives are actually more dangerous in close combat than a handgun, actually, right? So what the way actually most cities can get away with this, and New York actually does a good spot of doing this, is like, okay, you want to protest, you have every right to protest. We're going to spray paint this giant white line in this box, and you have to stay in that box. You could do whatever you want in that box, but if you step outside that box, you're going in the paddy wagon. Right. But that's something a lot of these others, especially like LA, didn't do. They didn't have a designated protester spot. So if you draw the line in the sand saying you have every right under the Constitution to protest openly, here's your place to do it. Now all the cameras, everything is on that box, so they can identify everybody who's doing something illegal. And then if you step outside that box, you hit a police officer, you throw a chair, you throw a fire extinguisher, you set off fireworks. then you could be specifically pulled out of that crowd and arrested individually, right? But the problem is in California, they don't care. It was mass havoc, and they just started rushing the police lines, and there was no line drawn in the sand. So it's much harder to arrest these people and, you know, prosecute them because of the way they plan those attacks. So,
well, my understanding is they arrested the one guy who was it threw a brick or had attacked the law enforcement, and he was wearing a mask, and they used some kind of technology to identify him, and they found him and arrested him, and he's now being charged with.
We have really cool cameras on the classified side that literally can measure certain things on your face or about your body, and I can identify who you are from like miles away.
Privacy doesn't exist anymore.
Privacy doesn't exist. Also, what we can do with your cell phone should scare you. Your cell phone is actually your most incriminating thing. If I don't like you and I have a warrant, all I have to do is type in your phone number on your phone, and I know everything about you. And I know where you were standing, your GPS tracking locations, everything else. How do you think they found where the Matt Crooks guy was meeting and who he was meeting with before he shot President Trump? Oh, then they exposed that they had that information. And magically that's gone away because they cremated his body and all that disappeared. So that's weird. But no, the United States government and the military has the technology to find anyone and anywhere. And ironically, when I was out in Normandy, I was meeting with the former CIA clandestine field officers who found bin Laden. And actually, if you watch the most recent Netflix special about finding bin Laden, it's like a 3-part episode. If you see Brian Stern, he's the guy that I was jumping with. They're the ones who identified who bin Laden was by how tall his shadow was on the sun from a satellite and a drone. So I don't think we can't find you if we want to know who you are.
So I wanted to share this video because it speaks to the narrative out there that all Hispanics are out to, to oppose ICE and whatever. And actually, that's not true. It's a very small percentage, but
there's a lot of ICE that is Hispanic.
They're giving good citizens.
Illegal Mexicans love Hispanics.
Yeah. So I found this video that I thought was really pertinent to this. So I want to share that, and then we can talk about it. Hold on a second. I'm going to put him on. It's really hilarious. I don't know if you've already seen it or not, but definitely something that we need to look at.
Hey, like, share, subscribe. You guys got to hear this.
You might want to turn your volume down.
Is that right?
Yell a little bit. I've been sent video after video, tagged in hundreds of videos about the stupid tonteras that is happening in LA. All you hood, Chicanos, Latinos, Hispanos, Mexicanos, all you Viva la Raza, y'all are literally out here destroying property that don't belong to you. You're literally out here destroying your own barrios and communities. You're the weakest link of your entire bloodline and ancestor. As a matter of fact, your ancestors are looking at you ashamed right now because this is something that they wouldn't even back up. They wouldn't stand for what you guys are doing there right now. At all. That's some real shit. Because at the end of the day, y'all are arguing and protesting to not send back chomos. People that have done some foul shit, kids, that have women and children, that have murdered some people that some of y'all know. You're advocating for them to stay here. Your ancestors would straight look at you and tell you, te lo hocico, pendejo. Have you noticed that not one Democrat has come out and said, hey, stop. Don't destroy your own property. Don't destroy your own community. Have you noticed that? It's only President Trump. And what's even more ironic than all of this is the people you're advocating to not get deported, the ones that come from Venezuela, El Salvador, Cuba, Guatemala, they don't give a fuck about none of you American citizens, even if you're a Latino, Mexicano, Hispano. They don't give a fuck about you simply because you were born on U.S. soil, pendejos. Like, agarra la onda, some of y'all's hate-filled hearts and hate goggles are so thick you can't even see the wolf in the hen house. And you're doing exactly what the white man that you can't stand, you're doing exactly what he wants you to. And that white man comes from the Democrat Party. Have you noticed we don't see any members of the black community out there protesting with you? The only ones in the white community you see are the white liberals. Why is that? Agarra la pinche onda, güeyes. I said what I said. Stupid asses.
Well, I loved every minute of that.
I mean, he's not wrong.
That was
Not
great.
at all. And he's got the passion for the.
All the Hispanics I work with in the oil and gas industry here in the state of Colorado, they feel the same way, right? It's insane. Is that the illegal immigrants that are destroying our local communities and everything else are giving everybody a bad name, and we're just trying to provide for our families and keep the economy running, keep the jets flying, keep the fuel flowing, and people like this are ruining it for everybody, right? So
you're making everyone disrespect the community that they're trying to uplift. And to be honest, a lot of these people, I genuinely see it from their interviews and everything. A lot of these people could be very good Americans, very good Republicans, but they're in an environment which rewards them for tearing this country down.
Right.
That is the thing, is that they are being rewarded and propped up against their own interests. And that's what we at Hispanic Patriot Podcast break down and dismantle every single day.
But they bring it on themselves because they have the ability to do the right thing. They have the ability to take the right positions, but
the ability to do the right thing has never helped anybody to do the right thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're weak-minded and they just follow like sheep, whatever idiot wants to lead them. I've seen so many of these on the street interviews by some of these YouTube people, and like that one lady that had the megaphone and she was shouting, "This is our land,"
No, it was Mexico's land for like 30-40 years. That was after it was New Spain, and that was given to that. And then
I thought it was Native Americans' land. Wait a minute, whose land is it again? Wait a minute.
Hold on. The Spaniards came in. Spaniards came in, killed all the Aztecs. They took everything. They created New Spain, which went all the way up to California and Wyoming, and then Mexico got created in 1821, and then they held on to this whole area for about 30 to 40 years. And then what they did was the United States came in and said, "Hey, we're going to buy all this stuff from you for $15 million." And then they sold it. And even after they sold it, we created the 4 states: New Mexico, Nevada, California, Colorado, that whole area, Texas. And then they got mad about it, and then they tried to fight us. So then we had the Mexican-American War, and that didn't work out too well for them either. Then they backed off and said, "Okay, we have a border now. We'll stay on this side. You stay on that side." And they took our. It was the best investment we had next to the Louisiana Purchase.
Absolutely.
So fair and square, and then we killed a bunch of you. Get over it. We win, you lose, and that's called warfare and human nature. Suck it.
Absolutely true. Although I will make one quick counterpoint, because I think this is something that America needs to take seriously. When we won the Mexican-American War, or let's even lose more accurate population statistics, we used to be 10 times the population of Mexico. Mexico was 16 million. We were about 130 million around the 1920s and 30s. Today, the American population is only 1/3 the size of Mexico. And unlike back in the 1920s, Hispanic America has a great... We will get him back when we finish this question. Hispanic America is many more millions of people than the United States of America, and that was not always the case. So the question that I'm going to have for Adam when he comes back is, given the population... Here we are.
Back.
No, it's quite all right, Adam. So given the China, there we go. Given the fact that America's position demographically, economically, is so much worse due to our deindustrialization, the destruction of our morals, the destruction of our families, given all this damage and now the disparity between our neighbors and our continent and ourselves compared to the past when we won these wars handily and when we didn't have tens of millions of Hispanics in the country, how does America square this round peg? How do we make sure that we maintain our integrity as a nation while, we can't deport, we're all going to be deported ourselves. We love America. How do we integrate the Hispanics that love America into the country and the nation through all this foreign interference and violence?
Well, that's an interesting question. And actually, even though I wasn't a huge big fan of the Great New Deal back in the day during, the Roosevelt era, it's an opportunity to recreate American infrastructure, right? And this is actually something, it's a good argument that even I've had a conversation with Josh Griffin about this too, is we spend about $120,000 a year and per prisoner in the state of Colorado just to let them sit there and do nothing. $120,000 a year. That's more than most Americans make. So people like Josh Griffin, I know I've talked to Scott Bottoms about it a lot too, which those interviews are going to be dropping later this summer. I'm really excited about it. Is that no, we're gonna put you to work. You're going to go outside and start building those new roads and all these new things. So, hey, you can still be a legal immigrant. We're going to just arrest you. But, if you want to earn your citizenship, you can either join the U.S. military, earn your citizenship that way, which is a valid option, which is still an option today, or you can go into the public works program where we need new bridges, we need new roads, we need new airports, and you guys like to work anyway, but you're going to kind of work for free for a while, and you're going to pay back your status as a citizen, right? Just like all these prisoners. It's like we had chain gangs back in the day, and I'm not saying we're going back to the plantation days, but if you murdered somebody, if you did something horrific for society, you have a debt to pay. We shouldn't just be paying for you to sit on your butt and read books and write manifestos.
It's maddening too. We need
Kaczynski's doing in Florence right now, right? It's insane. Is that if you want a pathway to citizenship, it shouldn't be for free, right? You're right. We have so many illegals in this country. It's minus the really hardcore criminals like MS-13. Send them to El Salvador. All for that, right? But we're not going to be able to get every single person out, but we should give people the option. We shouldn't just give a free. Now, Reagan screwed this up in California. This is actually what flipped California completely when he was president, was that he gave an amnesty thing and he signed it off. And when he signed off the amnesty and made all those illegal immigrants citizen under a blanket policy, that is what flipped California blue permanently. Right. So in order to avoid that disaster that Reagan screwed up back when he was president, we offer an amnesty program through work. Right. And you can come to this country. If you're a legal immigrant, you can surrender yourself, but you'll be given housing, you'll be given food, and you'll be put to work. We need new roads. We need new bridges. We need new airports. We need new pipelines, and you can learn a skill. And after that, people will value their citizenship so much more because they actually worked to help build the country they wanted to become a citizen of. And they'll be more respected by their fellow Americans now because they actually earn their way into this country just like every tax-paying American does today.
And with something to show for it and be proud of all across our land.
And they won't want to destroy it. Like, I'm going to go blow this bridge up that is built. No.
I do have to push back just a little bit on the Gipper.
Go ahead, push back, Hugo.
The Gipper was duped by the Democrats. That's a fact. And he owned it. And later on, he admitted, as much. So it wasn't exactly his plan to go and do what they duped him to do.
Right.
He thought he was going to get some things in return that were good for the country, but of course,
he got a big blue state that's been permanently liberalized since. It's a tragedy in American politics, honestly.
Yeah. It is a big tragedy, unfortunately, but not a permanently destructive one, I have to say, because
maybe the national government Republican. After you get tear gassed by the national government, maybe like, okay, I'm a Republican. I'm sorry.
Honestly, given the way our people act sometimes, I think, sometimes that kind of correction helps us see things very clear. It really does.
Yeah. Zip ties and sandbags work great.
I want to make a very quick point here, which is against the No Kings protest, because we here are a republic, 100%. But we're not haters of monarchy. We are under Christ the King. The idea that someone being kingly or noble is a bad thing has no basis in the United States. We are a republic because we are the greatest country on earth, not because of any other reason. So I think this idea that we need to lower ourselves has been completely rejected by the Hispanic community, but that has been the Democrats' motto this entire time. So I wanted to ask one final question, Adam. Do you feel that the country, even in California, that this violence and this destruction, do you believe it can have a positive impact to bring America to a more unitary place as a nation?
Well, I mean, it happened during 9/11, right? After those horrific attacks and disaster, I never saw more American flags being flown in my lifetime than when the terrorist attack occurred. But also, I think you bring up a good point, is that we are lacking in Christian and, I'm biased, but Catholic values, right? And
amen to that.
I'm not advocating for a crusade, but I'm advocating for a crusade, right?
You're in good company.
I know. I'm talking to the Hispanics here. Like, come on, like I'm the Irish guy. It's fine. No, it's true. Is that I you are right. We are ruled by one king, and that is Christ, right? And He's our Lord and Savior. And unfortunately, people don't understand that, and they think they can do whatever they want, and they live in squalor, and then get tear gassed, right? And if you just change your thinking and live by those Catholic Christian values, and understand who is really in charge. You can just be a better citizen and a better contributing member to society and stop being a shithead and lighting cop cars on fire. Stop doing that.
This
Jesus, cop cars on fire. He just flipped tables. All right.
I am the eternal optimist. That's just my trait. I mean, that's
thank God for that. One of us is.
I say that, and then some people go, "Oh, I'm a realist." I say, okay, that's fine. You can be a realist. I'm an optimist. And what we just saw in that video with that Hispanic gentleman, I think is more prevalent than people think in the Hispanic community.
I would agree.
They're out there, they're thinking that, they're talking about that, and I think this whole thing is going to backfire. I saw another video which was pretty graphic that I posted on my Facebook today, and with a pre-warning that for graphic language, but he was right on the money. And this was a black gentleman who was basically saying that you are dumbasses, if you will, for doing what you're doing, because what you're doing is the best ad that the Republican Party could have coming into the midterms. So
I agree. It's free advertising.
Keep doing what you're doing, because all you're going to do is elect more Republicans, and they love it.
Yeah, I mean they converted all the rooftop Koreans to Republican, and they haven't changed since. So we're right on path with that.
20 years, 30 years. So it's like
1994. 1994 is
how
when
that works. When people become Republican, they rarely want to step back from that.
Well, when your home and business gets burned, you see cops getting hit with cinder blocks in the face. It kind of changes your perspective of what party
that'll
you want to
do
belong
it,
to.
right?
So I wanted to close out with a real announcement. It's kind of a cloak and dagger announcement. We are asking people to save the date for August the 12th, 2025 in Colorado Springs. Huge event coming up, and more details will be forthcoming here in the next week or so.
That's going to be be there or be square. This is going to be a big event, guys.
We're looking for a big result. The people we've spoken to have liked the actual plan. My only regret is that you're not going to be able to do it for us, Adam, but we know you'll be there in spirit. And
I'll be in DC in July, and then August I'm heading out overseas again for another 3 weeks. My summer's been massively full. You guys know every time I have a day off, if I have the opportunity, I will be there. So
absolutely, yeah.
We appreciate you, Adam, for that.
We appreciate all the work you're doing. We definitely want to collaborate more with some of the issues. We've got an important SCC meeting that's going to be coming up.
That's going to be so exciting. Please tell me the results of all of that, because I just love being right.
We're going to have vice chair.
So do we all the time.
And opt out in one meeting. That's going to
no
be
confidence vote. Anyone? No confidence vote. Anyone? Just not trying to butter you over there, Hugo. But I'm not an SEC member, and I think we need a revamp. But I'm
actually,
just a president
Adam,
here.
I will put my word out there. I support that, because quite honestly, anytime there's been such a shakeup like this from two positions, why is that third position therefore not under scrutiny?
Well, what I heard about with the budget being passed last night, it passed by one vote. And it's mostly paying for somebody's particular legal troubles. That's where money is going to.
Didn't our vice chair who resigned say something about that?
I was there, and I was a big proponent of what was going on. But we actually won the vote to postpone, and then the parliamentarian allowed someone to change their vote after it was already done. So bad taste in my mouth.
Who is the parliamentarian?
Well, make sure that it passed.
He claimed, here's what his explanation was. The chair had not accepted the results. And
she's not going to accept anything that she doesn't favor. Let's be honest.
I said, well, what constitutes accepting the result? What she said was at the end of the vote, he said it's 11-10 no's, and then her first words out of her mouth, she paused for a minute, was taken aback, and she goes, well, so where do we go from here? That is an acceptance of the result right there.
Right. That's the vote. It went 11-10. You lost. Move on. You can't just hold a revote because it didn't go your way. That's not how that works. It's a song about that.
proof now that we have a system that is running the Colorado Republican Party that does not respect the election integrity principles, the parliamentary principles that we are based on. That is a fact of the matter. It is on record. We are not saying anything controversial here on the podcast. These are just the facts.
Well, hopefully Colorado Republicans take note of this and they decide to institute actual effectual leadership that's going to win us positions and help make the state right again versus spending all of our money on legal things that other people decide to get themselves involved in.
Amazing how they ruined it within 4 months for themselves, about 3 to 4 months.
We should put in the bylaws a 25th Amendment clause.
Yeah. I want to put in a PT test personally because I'm a jerk. You should be able to do 25 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, and run a mile in, let's say, less than 12 minutes in order to be any elected position. I'll be nice about it. I'll run the PT test myself. I'll go out there and do it with them. You know, but if you're broken,
I would pay to see that.
I would pay double to watch that. I mean, you know,
you pay double to watch yourself watch that. That's how good it is.
I mean, she is a firefighter, so she should be able to do it pretty easily.
I know that because I see her in her uniform literally all the time.
Yeah, she uses that uniform pejoratively.
Now, my grandfather was a fire captain, actually. Now, I understand maybe some days you have to cut some guys down who hang themselves or some crazy stuff happening, but I have a strong feeling that that's not exactly the kind of experiences.
When I was a firefighter, I had to take a 200-foot, 2-inch hose up 15 flights of stairs in full bunker gear in SCBA. Just throwing it out there. Just throwing it out there. I don't see many people in the Republican Party doing that.
Or being humble about it, as it turns out. Because I want to say one thing real quick is that I am tired of people just dogging on their, how special they are. Oh, I'm special and I need to be in this leadership role. Nobody else could do it.
No, it's Tyler Durden, bro. You are not a unique and special snowflake. Okay.
Exactly.
Sorry.
We need more
Fight Club.
Humility
You don't talk about
in
Fight
the
Club.
Republican Party, but the ability to fight, exactly, because humility does not mean that you couldn't whoop somebody's you know what.
Or why don't you just lead by example and be humble about it and encourage people to become voters versus doing really bad 1 minute while you're reading the script off your phone that somebody wrote for you.
Or
it's not really inspiring.
Or going to Libertarian Party events when you have a 4-representative town hall to go to.
I mean, I'm not reading off a script, and all three of us here can speak plainly because we're real humans. That's all I'm asking for is real leadership.
We have a good time, guys. It's like that's what we want to encourage. Have a good time with your politics. Be with your brothers and take back Colorado.
I want to close on a good note, and that is we're minus Little Willie and we're minus Mr. Phelan.
Yep, and Dave Williams was hated so much by the Trump administration, worked so much for the Democrats that he was appointed to the Trump administration and is moving to D.C. So big congratulations to Mr. Williams on that.
Yes, that's what we want to say. Congratulations to Mr.
I've already
told
him and asked him that we get him back on the show once he's settled in, and we wish him the best. I told him, I'm sorry you're moving to the swamp, but somebody.
Yeah, but he's probably going to be able to make more positive changes out there than he was going to be able to do here with what, until the state decides to change its mind on who it wants to lead it in the conservative movement. So
that's what often happens is that we lose our best to the national stage, actually. That's actually how Turning Point USA got started, and look how it is today. So even though
I spend most of my time in DC because I just get yelled at here saying I'm mean. I'm so mean to people here in Weld County.
All right, well, we're up against the clock, folks. So, Adam, thank you for coming back on, and we
always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
A great summer with all your adventures coming up, and definitely stay in touch and keep us abreast of what's happening.
Well, I'll go off and save the world, and in the meantime, I'll be advocating for all the Hispanics here as much as I can, and let me know what you guys need.
Hey, so will we.
Adam.
Yep.
Good night.
Always good to see you, Adam.
All right.
That was Adam DeRito, everyone. You know I'm your lover.
We're definitely running late, folks, so we're going to have to close it out. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and make sure that you subscribe, like, donate, tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody. Come to the Hispanic Patriot Podcast. We want to be your go-to place for information in Colorado.
You can trust us.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
God bless
everyone.
America,
God bless
and
America.
pray for all the people in the distressed cities. So,
yes,
thank you for
pray for LA.